You couldn't be around Elvis Presley and not fall in love with him. You couldn't be around him and not recognize the magnanimous person he was.
Linda Thompson was the woman who loved Elvis Presley when the world only saw the star, not the man. She saw his laughter, his pain, and the moments no one else knew. For years, she kept it all in her heart until now, when she finally shares their truth. Join us as we uncover a love story the world never truly knew. When love feels like home and a cage.
So
you were 22, but
22 going on, 13. And so
what
I
was the occasion?
I was Miss Tennessee. I was at Miss Tennessee Universe in 1972.
In the warm summer of 1972, Linda Thompson walked into a theater in Memphis, Tennessee, not knowing her life was about to take a new turn. She was more than a beautiful young woman. She had recently earned the title of Miss Tennessee and was admired for her charm, intelligence, and calm presence. Though she grew up in a modest Southern home, she carried herself with confidence and grace that drew attention both in Nashville and Hollywood. But it was Elvis Presley, the world's biggest music star at the time, who noticed something truly rare in her. Their meeting didn't happen by accident. A mutual friend, Bill Browder, who would later become known as country singer T.G. Shepherd, invited Linda to a private movie night hosted by Elvis himself. The screening was held at the Memphis Theater, a place Elvis liked to rent after midnight so he could watch films with his friends away from the public eye. Linda had no idea that saying yes to that invitation would lead to a close and deeply personal bond with the king of rock and roll. When Elvis walked into the theater that night, Linda noticed right away that he didn't seem cheerful or energetic. He appeared tired, maybe even in a bad mood. But the moment his eyes met hers, everything about him seemed to soften. There was an instant connection between them, one that went far deeper than appearances. They ended up talking for hours after the movie ended, speaking like two people who understood each other rather than a superstar and a beauty queen. That night, Elvis spoke openly about his past, his childhood struggles, the pain of losing his mother, and the deep loneliness that fame often brought him. Linda didn't treat him like a celebrity or shower him with empty compliments. She listened closely, offering warmth and understanding. She saw the man behind the fame, and he saw in her the genuine care he had been longing for. By the time the sun began to rise, Elvis had asked her to visit Graceland, his famous home, the very next day. Linda agreed, and soon she found herself walking through the gates of the legendary mansion. Inside, the atmosphere was alive with music, laughter, and the energy of people enjoying life. Gold records lined the walls, and every corner told a story of success. From the moment she stepped inside, Elvis made her feel valued and welcomed, as though she had always belonged there. Not long after meeting, Linda moved into Graceland and became part of Elvis's daily life. It wasn't just about living in a beautiful home or being surrounded by fame. She quickly learned that life with him was far from simple. She wasn't only his girlfriend, she became his best friend, his secret keeper, and often the person who cared for him most. Elvis had a warm, fun, and creative side. He loved staying up late singing, watching movies together, and sharing quiet, intimate moments. They even decorated rooms in Graceland side by side, including the famous Jungle Room, making it a playful reflection of their bond. But behind the laughter and music, Linda saw the struggles he carried. She realized how deeply he needed her, not as a fan, but as someone who could comfort him when the weight of his world became too heavy. He often battled sleepless nights and haunting dreams, waking up drenched in sweat and confusion. Linda would sit with him through those long hours, rubbing his back, speaking softly, and even praying aloud to calm him. She cared for him with a tenderness that went beyond romance. She didn't see a superstar who needed fixing. She saw a man who needed love, patience, and understanding, and she gave all of that without holding back. There were harder moments too. She saw him becoming more dependent on prescription medicines, something the outside world knew little about at the time. He wasn't trying to harm himself. He was simply trying to cope with the crushing pressure, constant demands, and a sadness that never truly left. Linda didn't scold or threaten to leave. She stayed by his side during hospital visits, restless nights, and moments when he doubted himself. Those close to Elvis believed her care may have given him more time than anyone expected. She brought light into some of his darkest years, and in return, Elvis gave her special nicknames and told her she was the best woman he had ever known. Still, Linda understood that love alone couldn't erase his pain. They had moments of pure joy, dancing barefoot in the living room, softly singing to each other, laughing until the early hours, but there was always a shadow over their happiness. No amount of fame, fortune, or affection could calm the storm inside him. Linda's purpose was never to change him, but to stand by him with loyalty and devotion. Yet she had her own life before Elvis. She had dreams, goals, and a strong sense of identity. At first, Graceland felt magical, but over time it began to feel like a gilded cage. Every room echoed with his needs, and slowly she found herself disappearing into the background. She became more like a nurse, a constant source of strength, the anchor keeping him steady through every storm. Day after day, she poured her energy into holding him together, but the quiet ache of her own forgotten dreams began to grow. She loved him with all her heart, but inside a small voice kept asking when it would be her turn to live. That voice grew louder until she reached a painful crossroads. She had to choose between staying and losing herself completely, or walking away from the man she still loved deeply. And so she stood there, torn between her heart and her own freedom, wondering which path her life would take next. The quiet goodbye.
I thought he was still married, and I was very standoffish. And he finally, during one of his nuzzles, said, "Honey, you know I'm not married anymore." To which I responded, "No, I didn't."
The love story between Linda Thompson and Elvis Presley began with passion and devotion, but over time it turned bittersweet. Even after their romance ended, their connection never truly vanished. Linda's choice to leave wasn't about chasing fame, finding someone new, or turning her back on him. It was about survival. She needed a life that allowed her to breathe, to grow, and to find peace, something that life with Elvis could no longer give. She had been a source of comfort and light during some of his darkest moments, and in return, he had made her feel valued and cherished. For a while, their love brought both of them joy and a sense of calm. But the longer she stayed, the heavier the reality became. She saw him constantly battling exhaustion both in body and mind. His moods often shifted, sometimes quiet and withdrawn, other times unpredictable and unsteady. She encouraged him to rest, to get healthy, to free himself from the habits that were slowly destroying him. He would agree, speaking with hope and sincerity, but the promises faded quickly like a melody drifting away. Privately, she watched the man she adored slowly slip away. There were days when he barely spoke, and moments when he would suddenly collapse mid-conversation. Sometimes, she could hardly recognize the vibrant, full-of-life person she had fallen for. Still, she stayed longer than most would have, holding on to the belief that her love could make a difference. But eventually, she knew it wasn't enough. Linda longed for a steady, peaceful life. She dreamed of becoming a mother and raising children in a safe, quiet home, something that felt impossible in the chaos surrounding Elvis's world. His fame, declining health, and constant emotional needs pushed that dream further out of reach. And there was another painful truth she could no longer ignore. He was not always faithful. Though he cared for her in his own way, there were other women, and one of them was Mindy Miller. These betrayals made her see that they could never truly build the future she wanted. It wasn't anger or revenge that led her to walk away. It was the quiet acceptance that her heart could no longer endure the same wounds. By 1976, she had made up her mind. Elvis's health was failing fast. This time, it wasn't just fatigue, his body was breaking down. She saw the warning signs, even when others refused to believe it. Deep down, she carried a fear she couldn't shake. She didn't want to become a widow before she even turned 30. The thought of watching him pass away was a weight she wasn't ready to carry for the rest of her life. When she left, there was no drama, no cruel words, and no storm of accusations. It was quiet and heartbreaking. She packed her things slowly, tears streaming down her face. Before walking out, she bent down, kissed him gently on the forehead, and told him she would always be there if he needed her. And she meant it. Her love didn't vanish just because she walked away. In the years that followed, many people misunderstood her decision. Some claimed she left to chase her own fame. Others insisted she had found another man. And some believed she simply couldn't handle being with someone so famous. They looked at her beauty and assumed it was ambition, not heartbreak, that led her out of Graceland. Linda never tried to defend herself. She didn't correct the rumors, didn't rush to write a book, and never sold their story to the tabloids. She had loved Elvis too deeply to reduce what they had to cheap headlines. Maybe she stayed silent because she wasn't ready to tell the world. Or maybe, deep in her heart, she was keeping a promise she had once made to him, the call she could never forget.
Our life was staying up all night, sleeping all day. He had a difficult time with prescription drugs, to say the least. I'm not the one who brought that out to the public. I protected him for as long as I could as well.
A few months after Linda moved out of Graceland, Elvis reached out to her late one night. During those quiet hours when old memories seem to rise and the silence feels heavier than air. His voice came through the phone, but it didn't sound like the one she remembered. The charm, the energy, the confident spark that once lit up his words were gone. Instead, his tone was low, unsteady, and drained, as if all his defenses had fallen away. He sounded tired, fragile, and deeply unsure. In that call, he told her something that stayed with her forever. He said she had been the only person who had ever truly cared for him. Hearing those words hit her harder than she expected. In an instant, memories of their life together rushed back. The countless nights she had checked on him, the little acts of care she gave without being asked, the way she had tried to ease his physical pain and quiet his emotional storms. His words told her something painful but clear. He felt alone, and he believed that no one else had cared for him the way she did. Linda had once hoped that by stepping away he would find strength on his own. She prayed that without her constant presence he might find new reasons to take better care of himself. But now she realized he wasn't healing. He was slipping further away. That phone call broke something in her. For months afterward, she wrestled with a question that would not leave her mind. Had her decision to leave helped him or hurt him? She had wanted to believe her absence would give him room to recover. But hearing him so weak, so resigned, felt like the answer she feared most. She began to wonder if anyone else was truly watching over him. Was he eating well? Was he resting? Was his breathing okay? Did he have someone to step in when he needed help? Having lived with him, she had learned every rhythm of his days, when he slept, when he stirred, when he was in pain. Without being there, the silence surrounding his life made her worry even more. She didn't think the occasional staff check-ins or phone calls were enough. In her heart, she believed she was the only one who truly understood how to look after him. Charlie Hodge, a guitarist and one of Elvis's closest lifelong friends, became her lifeline for updates. She began calling him more often, each time with the same pressing concern. She would ask him to check on Elvis in person, to make sure his breathing was steady, to tell her if he looked well. She would listen carefully to every word, clinging to even the smallest reassurance. One Friday night, just days before Elvis passed away, Linda felt an overwhelming wave of worry. She picked up the phone and called Graceland, asking to speak to Charlie. She tried to keep her voice calm, but her heart was heavy. She asked about Elvis, still unable to shake the unease in her chest. In a quiet, urgent tone, she asked Charlie to please go see for himself and make sure Elvis was okay. There was a pause on the line, a silence that made her wonder if he had gone to check or simply wanted to ease her mind. After a moment, he came back and told her that Elvis was fine, that everything was okay. But deep inside, Linda couldn't shake the feeling that the man she still cared for so deeply was slipping further out of reach. That late-night conversation with Charlie turned out to be the last time Linda ever tried to check on Elvis. Only a few days later, the call she had always feared came. She was at her home in Los Angeles when the phone rang. On the other end was Lisa Marie Presley, just 9 years old, her voice breaking with uncontrollable sobs. Through her cries, she told Linda that her father was gone. The news struck like lightning, leaving Linda frozen in shock. She had carried so much quiet worry for so long, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. All the nights spent wondering if he was okay, all the unshakable fears she'd tried to push aside, they now felt like warnings she had been powerless to stop. The grief was sharp, sudden, and unbearable, trapping her in what felt like a dream she desperately wanted to wake from. As the details slowly emerged, the reality became even harder to accept. Elvis had been found collapsed in the bathroom. Though help came, it was too late. On August 16, 1977, the man she had once shared her life with was gone forever. When Linda heard the final confirmation, the weight of every memory they had made and every moment they had lost fell heavy on her heart. She couldn't stop asking herself if there had been more she could have done. From that day on, she carried the memory of the last words he had ever spoken to her like a shadow she could never let go. Even before that tragic day, the world had been waiting for her to speak. Their breakup had fueled endless rumors, some careless, some cruel. The press wanted a story, fans wanted answers, and gossip magazines wanted drama. Reporters offered interviews, television producers promised airtime, and publishers dangled book deals that could have made her a fortune. If she had wanted to, she could have written a tell-all within months, sharing the most private details of their life together. But she refused. While others rushed to share their own versions, some honest, others twisted, Linda remained silent. She wasn't quiet because she had nothing to say, but because their time together was not something she was willing to turn into headlines. In her heart, it was sacred, and she chose to protect it, even if the world never fully understood. Elvis was more than a famous singer or a music legend to Linda. He wasn't just the king of rock and roll everyone admired. He was the man she loved deeply. He was the one who held her hand during quiet moments and leaned on her when the pressures of life became too heavy. She had seen his tears, felt his fears, and shared in his joy. That love wasn't something she could ever trade for money or attention. Years later, when people wondered why she stayed silent about their life together, her answer was simple. She wanted to protect the little dignity he had left. Her silence wasn't about pretending their time together never happened. It came from deep respect for him and his family. When Elvis passed away, the loss was raw for everyone close to him. His daughter, Lisa Marie, was still a child. His fans were heartbroken. His family was grieving. Linda couldn't bear the thought of adding to their pain. She understood how powerful her words could be, and she knew they might be twisted or used in ways she never intended. So she chose not to speak, not because she didn't care, but because her love and respect for him ran too deep. She kept their moments safe in her heart, like treasures locked away where no one could touch them. Over time, she watched others tell their stories. Some spoke truthfully, but others painted pictures that didn't reflect the man she knew. To some, he was nothing more than a troubled celebrity caught in fame and addiction. To others, he was a fading star with strange habits. Linda disliked those portrayals because she knew the real person behind the headlines, the man with kindness, charm, humor, struggles, and fears. She didn't want those truths buried under false stories. In her own way, her silence became the strongest shield she could give him. By staying out of the noise, she kept his real story safe. But staying quiet didn't mean she forgot, stopped caring, or never thought of speaking. Maybe she was just waiting for the right moment. Losing Elvis wasn't only a public loss, it was deeply personal for her. Even though they had ended their relationship a year before his death, they still spoke and still cared for each other. When he passed, it felt like a heavy wave crashing over her. Healing from that kind of pain takes time, and sometimes it can only happen in stillness. Perhaps those quiet years were her way of grieving, sorting through the memories and understanding what it had all meant. But did she eventually share her side of the story? That's what we're about to find out, so stay tuned. Linda Thompson, Heartfelt Revelation.
But I didn't know. It hadn't been released to the press. So I was pretty standoffish because, you know, I was a good Southern Baptist girl.
It took almost 40 years after Elvis Presley's passing for Linda Thompson to finally share her side of the story. In 2016, she broke her long silence in her memoir, A Little Thing Called Life. For decades, she had held those memories close, guarding them from the world. When she finally chose to speak, it wasn't to create gossip, stir up scandal, or grab attention. Her goal wasn't to point fingers or expose anyone. She wrote to honor a man she had loved deeply, to let the world see the real person behind the legend everyone thought they knew. Her words were gentle yet powerful. She didn't try to paint Elvis as flawless, nor did she drag him down. Instead, she showed a rare, honest, and tender view of him as a human being. She reminded readers that beyond the glittering stage lights and endless fame was a man with dreams, faults, struggles, and a heart that could love deeply. Her book didn't shock people, it touched them. It gave fans a new way to look at him, adding layers of truth to the image they had carried for years. Linda had known Elvis in a way few ever could. From 1972 to 1976, she lived with him, traveled with him, and became part of his daily world. She saw the larger-than-life performer adored by millions, but she also knew the private man, the one who laughed at silly jokes, who could light up a room without trying, and who found joy in making others happy. She described him as generous, warm, and full of charm. He loved surrounding himself with people he trusted and had a natural urge to care for those around him. One story that stood out in her memoir told of the time he walked into a pet shop and bought every animal in the store, mostly dogs, just so he could gift them to friends. For him, giving was never about showing off. It was about seeing joy in the faces of others. Acts like this, Linda said, revealed the side of Elvis the public rarely got to see, a side that was sweet, caring, and deeply emotional. She also spoke about his sensitive nature. He might have worn the image of a strong, confident man in public, but privately he could be deeply vulnerable. He felt things intensely and loved with his whole heart. If you were someone he cared for, he would stand by you fiercely. Linda treasured that quality in him, but she didn't shy away from the harder truths. Elvis battled self-destructive habits, including a dependence on prescription medication. At times, he could be moody, impatient, or self-focused. Linda never tried to excuse these sides of him, but she sought to understand them. She believed that the enormous pressures of fame, the loneliness that came with it, and the endless demands placed on him wore him down. Even with people constantly around him, there were moments when he felt completely alone. Life with Elvis, she said, could feel like a fairy tale. There were nights filled with laughter, romance, and magic. He could be spontaneous, playful, and full of surprises like living with Prince Charming. But as with any fairy tale, shadows eventually crept in. Toward the end of their relationship, the joy began to fade. The fame that once brought excitement started to feel like a cage. Their lives became more confined. His health changed, his mood shifted, and the pressures pressing on them both grew heavier. Linda stayed as long as she could, but by 1976, while they were in San Francisco, she knew she had to step away. Ending their romantic relationship didn't end their connection, though. She shared that while Elvis may not have always been faithful physically, she never felt he betrayed her emotionally. She believed he truly loved her, and that bond stayed strong even after they were apart. She had always tried to give him love, comfort, and understanding because she knew how much he needed those things. What made her memoir stand out was the way she told the story, with honesty, kindness, and an enduring love. She didn't hide the flaws, but she didn't let them erase the goodness either. She allowed the world to see both the light and the dark, the laughter and the pain, the strength and the fragility. Through her words, she gave people a more complete picture of Elvis, not as an unreachable icon, but as a human being who could be just as complicated and tender as anyone else. Her memories reminded fans that their idol was more than the voice they heard on records or the figure they saw on stage. He was someone who could give generously, who could laugh until his eyes watered, who could love deeply, and who could hurt just as deeply. She made his story richer by showing the humanity behind the fame. Linda's account also gave a rare look into what it was like to share a life with someone so famous. She wrote about the constant movement, the unusual hours, the thrill of being part of the excitement, and the challenges of living under the spotlight. She painted vivid scenes, quiet moments at home, bursts of laughter on the road, and the sweet small gestures that never made it into newspapers. Even when she spoke of the difficult times, There was no bitterness in her words. She wrote with the voice of someone who had lived through it, learned from it, and still carried love for the person she once knew so well. She understood that being Elvis Presley was never easy. The world adored him, but the world also demanded more from him than most people could give. By finally sharing her story, Linda didn't just add her voice to the history of Elvis Presley, she deepened it. She gave the man back his humanness in a way that few others could. Her memoir allowed fans to see the charm and the flaws side by side, to understand that the man they admired had moments of joy and moments of struggle, just like anyone else. Through her words, she brought him to life again, not just as a performer commanding the stage, but as a man who loved, who stumbled, who needed connection, and who left an unforgettable mark on those who knew him best. And perhaps that was the greatest gift her story gave, the reminder that the real magic of Elvis Presley wasn't only in his music, but in the humanity that made him who he was. Life after leaving Elvis. After her time with Elvis Presley, Linda Thompson slowly began putting her life back together, holding close the lessons she learned from loving him. Life without him was nothing like before, yet his influence stayed quietly woven into her journey. She found her way back into the spotlight, first as one of the hee-haw honeys on the popular variety show Hee Haw, and later appearing in hit TV series like Starsky and Hutch, Chips, and Fantasy Island. But it was in music that Linda discovered her most personal and fulfilling path. Pouring her feelings into her work, she co-wrote the powerful ballad I Have Nothing with David Foster, a song brought to life by Whitney Houston in The Bodyguard. Its heartfelt lyrics about longing and vulnerability reflected the kind of deep emotion she once felt with Elvis. Her personal life took new turns as well. In 1981, she married Olympic champion Bruce Jenner, now known as Caitlyn Jenner. They had 2 sons, Brandon and Brody, who would later make their own names in the entertainment world. On the surface, it looked like the perfect family, but in time, their marriage ended in 1986. A few years later, in 1991, she married David Foster, the same man she had written music with. Their relationship brought creative success and personal companionship, lasting until 2005. Linda often felt that every relationship in her life taught her something important. Each one brought new lessons about love, life, and herself. Yet none of them ever compared to what she had with Elvis. He wasn't just a chapter in her youth. He was her first great love, the one who broke her heart and also taught her what true devotion looked like. That kind of love never really left her. So what do you think about Linda's revelation? Do you think she did the right thing by waiting so long to speak up? Let's hear from you in the comments. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.